Good morning and welcome to Talking Pop Culture with Jake D. It is the day after Thanksgiving and we got honestly a gem of an episode of Mandalorian to talk about this morning. So chapter 13, The Jedi. My goodness. I'll tell you what, I was a little apprehensive going into this one, and a lot of leaks came out this week. A few days before the episode aired, there was a channel, Heavy Spoilers, that got some real spoilers for this one. I watched the video that he laid out, and it was pretty much on the nose. Now, there's a lot of people out there who, don't spoil anything. I don't want to hear anything about this until I've seen it. I'm not one of those people. I love spoilers. I enjoy them because for me, it doesn't affect my enjoyment of the show, because what's important to me is seeing the execution. So knowing the events ahead of time is fine for me. I don't have an issue with it. And good morning. We got 32 flavors of Nick Weiser in the chat. Just another red shirt is here as well. Good morning, gentlemen. Glad to have you. But yeah, so first reaction, this episode for me, it's going to get my highest rating of the season. I'm not going to bury the lead, and I'm going to give her a solid 9 out of 10. Yep, I'm giving her a 9 out of 10. Loved the episode. It did lots of good things. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Very, very solid episode. So what worked for me? So first, I want to call out something that some people have complained about sort of historically with the series, and that was the musical score for this episode. I thought it was on the money. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Goranson this was his best performance as the composer for the show this week. Everything worked great. And it just really enhanced what we were watching, what a musical score is supposed to do. They even did a sort of a new riff on Mando's theme using a flute or some other type of wind instrument, which I loved. I thought it was great, and it just fit what was happening on screen wonderfully. We got a lot of info, so similar to how we gained a lot of information at the end of episode 4 of this season. We got a lot in this one as well, so we're getting into and advancing the story. And oddly enough, some of our best story episodes of this season have also been episodes in which we're clearly getting characters introduced through like backdoor pilots for their own solo series. So, I mean, Gina got really kind of, it was a test for her to have a spinoff show in chapter 12. And chapter 13, this is the introduction of Ahsoka to the wider audience. Not a lot of folks outside of the really core fans have seen Clone Wars and Rebels. Clone Wars is a pretty good show. I've seen, I don't know, maybe about half of it, something like that. I'm not a big animation guy, so I had never watched the majority of it. Rebels, I caught maybe, I don't know, quarter, 30% of it, something like that. And Ahsoka was a really big character from those animation shows. And Rosario Dawson did great. I was a little miffed by the fact that they didn't give the role to Ashley Eckstein, who voiced the character through those 2 animation shows. But Rosario put all those reservations to rest today. She was great as Ashoka Tano, and we got to see her right from the first moment of the episode. The initial scene is her going through this sort of burnt out forest, and she's surrounded by fog, and she's kind of in and out of it as she's taken out some of these troopers in order to confront the magistrate of this town, whom we find out rather immediately has some information that Ahsoka wants, and Ahsoka gives her basically an ultimatum to turn that info over, which was sort of the big reveal at the end of the episode. And that's our sort of our initial just bam, we're right into it with Ahsoka. Rosario looked great. She acted great. The lightsaber usage was subdued, which might sound a little weird considering she had them out a pretty fair bit. But what you didn't get like a highly choreographed lightsaber duel of any type, like, think to the Duel of the Fates in episode 1, which was probably the best lightsaber duel that's been on screen. And, so you're not getting one of those highly choreographed interactions like that, but you got to see good use in a live action real world of those lightsabers. And it worked. It worked really well for me. And she had, of course, her 2 white bladed lightsabers, which were a very unique thing for Ahsoka as compared to any of the other Jedi. So Ahsoka throws her ultimatum down, and then we come into Mando. He's arriving on Corvus with the child, and he rolls into town, and there's clearly a lot of not good stuff going on. I mean, they make that clear very quickly that this magistrate that Ahsoka was throwing down with is not a good person. She's not giving us a good vibe, and she's clearly a tyrant over this village, town, whatever you want to call it. And she's got some people imprisoned in a way that was, to me, it was a throwback to the KOTOR video game. They had these, there were a few moments in KOTOR where they had these people in very similar prisons that, could torture or kill you. So it was a member berry there. We also got a little quick member berry when Mando was landing. If you think back to the Rebel base on Yavin, the guys had these handheld things where they tracked incoming ships, and we got to see that as the Razor Crest was coming in. Another quick little just sort of nugget that was a little bit of an attention to detail that makes you feel like you're in Star Wars, particularly in the OT, which Favreau and Filoni have done a good job of bringing those in without smashing them in your face and beating you over the head with them for the most part. So I liked that. It was good. Mando has a chat with the magistrate, and he's clearly in there. He's looking for information, and he gets it pretty quickly and easily, quite honestly, because the magistrate tells him, hey, I got a problem with a Jedi. Tell you what, if you go kill her, we can work something out. He tells her his price is high more than once. And she offers him up a Beskar spear as payment for killing the Jedi, whom he obviously knows is the person he's after in Ashoka Tano. He doesn't let on to the magistrate about that because he's got his own agenda. Mando pops off to go find Ahsoka. And as I was suspecting, Beskar can stop a lightsaber. Really neat scene where Ahsoka just goes after Mando instantly, and he holds his own against her for a very short and brief fight, which is exactly what the leaks told us we were going to get. Blocking the lightsabers with his Beskar was a great scene. I liked it. It was fun. I enjoyed the hell out of it. And he stops her by calling her name out and telling her that Bo-Katan sent him. Then we get some neat moments where Ahsoka is, I mean, communing is probably the right word, with the child, whom, big reveal in this episode, we find out his name is Grogu. So Grogu and Ahsoka are communicating in a fashion, and we get a little bit of backstory about the child. He was raised and trained in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. During and before the Clone Wars era, Grandmaster Yoda gets name dropped because, of course, they're of the same species. And we get an interesting bit of info about the Force, really, from Ahsoka that I think some people might have missed. And she doesn't want to train him, right? It's the same trope that we get about not training people who aren't younglings because, the fear and the risk of the dark side. She mentions that she's seen what happens when somebody falls. Obviously a not so subtle reference to Anakin and Darth Vader. And she says she doesn't want to train this kid. And I mean, certainly that may be part of her reasons, but she's also got her own agenda that she's trying to pursue that we find out about more significantly later in the episode. So Grogu, the child is Grogu, and he's been trained in the Force, which was a bit of an open question for folks. People have been talking about since Mando debuted and we first saw the child use the Force is, well, how's he doing this without any training and things like that? And so, I mean, Ahsoka just flat out tells us he's been trained. He has had training in the Jedi Temple itself on Coruscant, which it's helpful, right? It fills in some gaps. And she explains that he was hidden after Order 66. And then basically his memory goes dark. So there's a gap in his own memory of what happened to him prior to, you get the impression prior to Mando rescuing him, there was some type of gap in his memory for some reason, whether that was self-induced, whether it was due to captors or what it is, we don't know at this point, but we do know that he's missing a pretty significant period of time. I mean, it's like 30 years, something in that neighborhood, right? So Grogu's been trained in the Force previously, and Ahsoka doesn't want to train him. Again, the same kind of trope we've gotten about why you shouldn't train people who are not younglings. But Mando's really insistent because, of course, his quest and his purpose up to this point, since the episode of chapter 3, has been to get this kid back where he belongs, of course, with his kind, the Jedi, the namesake of this chapter. And Ahsoka has her own agenda that she needs to take care of. And Mando says he'll help her out if she agrees to take the child. And so naturally, they have their combat scene coming up. Ahsoka needs to get a hold of this magistrate to find out the information that she's got. And cut to our battle action scene of the episode where they go ahead and they assault the forces that are holding this town. And the opening part of that battle is really cool because it was sort of almost what I was expecting during the opening scene of the episode, where Ahsoka takes the gate and just very easily, honestly, takes down the guards, combination of the lightsabers and the Force, and the assault begins. The majority of the assault on the town was at the hands of Ahsoka, and we got some really good action. Rosario did a great job with her piece as Ashoka Tano. Just enjoyed the hell out of this assault on the town. We got another KOTOR member berry thrown in. So beyond just these stasis prisons that they've got a couple of townspeople in, we also get thrown out there that there's a couple of Hk87 droids. Fans of the old KOTOR games will, of course, remember Hk87, who was just a great character in those games. Lots of comedy came from him because of the way that he was designed and he spoke and things like that. I was disappointed that we didn't get similar vocalizations from these HKs. And honestly, they were relatively inconsequential, taken out just about as easily as all the other mercenaries in town. Mando's action was relatively limited to keeping everybody else out of the inner courtyard once Ahsoka went in. He very quickly dispatched a couple other guards, and the head guard, whom Mando referred to as a hired gun when he was explaining to Ahsoka who was there, the two of them have a Western standoff. and it was great. I mean, it was right out of Clint Eastwood, like High Plains Drifter kind of stuff. You're in the middle of town, and you got the standoff of the two gunslingers, and Mando's just waiting to draw the whole time, and there was good tension and drama in that scene, and I liked it. The guy, of course, said, hey, for the right price, we'll do our thing, and for the right cause, this isn't the right cause, like he thinks he's fooling Mando. He puts the gun down, and then, of course, draws for his own sidearm, and Mando takes care of business like any good gunslinger would. We talk about Mandalorian as a space Western in many ways, and that scene was, if anybody had any doubts that is very much what's been on the minds of Favreau and Filoni as they've created this show, I would certainly hope that put it to rest. It was a great scene. I loved it. Absolutely, Nick. Mando really shined in that scene, and it was really good, really solid. I liked it. While that standoff's happening, you've got Ahsoka dueling with the Magistrate in the inner courtyard, and Ahsoka was clearly fighting in a reserved manner, and the Magistrate was taking advantage of that. Ahsoka couldn't kill her because she needed information. The Beskar spear that she used, of course, is sufficient to fight against a lightsaber, as we saw when Mando was able to block the sabers with his armor. That scene, that was about my only quibble of the episode, honestly, because I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, if you hit with the saber and somebody has blocked it with just this regular spear, really, other than being made out of Beskar, it's a standard spear, and you've made contact with your lightsaber, all you got to do is like this, right? And you cut her fingers off and the duel is over. And I just kept thinking that the whole time as they're having this fight. I mean, all Ahsoka's got to do is just flick her wrist and the fight is done. And I don't see, after she's killed some of the other guards, I don't know why she'd care about cutting the Magistrate's fingers off. She needs information out of the woman anyway. I mean, that was like my only quibble here. It was a decent fight scene. And again, Ahsoka is clearly being reserved because she can't kill the lady. She's got to get info out of her. Once she does finally secure the spear from her, we learn what that information is, which is, of course, where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? Thrawn is originally an EU character from the Great Timothy Zahn trilogy of the Thrawn trilogy is really what it's known as. Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. 3 amazing books that I read back in high school and just loved the hell out of them. Thrawn was, God, he was an amazing villain. Just incredible. He was reintroduced to canon through the Rebels show, which, of course, is how Ahsoka knows him. And at the end of Rebels, she was going to go off to look for Thrawn and Ezra. We don't know if that was ever done, if she found Thrawn and Ezra. Just because she's looking for Thrawn now doesn't mean that she never located them previously. Yes, the great conflict of our time, or at least Friday Night Tights, the floating is moot. This is Star Wars. Yes, I agree, Red Shirt. Absolutely. 100% agree with you. This was Star Wars. It was quintessential Star Wars. And with the flavor of the Mandalorian running through it. Everything about this episode was Star Wars to me. It was great. The acting was on point and solid. I loved that showdown at high noon that we got with Mando and the lead merc. And the Ahsoka fight was good. But again, my only quibble was that, why don't you just cut her fingers off? It'd be super easy. Just flick your wrist right down the shaft of that spear. and the fight would be over and you could get your information. And I don't know, maybe it was an honor thing or just proving that she could take her out without dirty tricks or whatever. I mean, it was still good. That was just kind of the nitpicker in me, I think, that had the issue with that. But where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? And, this is, of course, the introduction to what's almost certainly going to be an Ahsoka Tano spinoff series. She is after Thrawn. Thrawn, if you are not familiar with him, you really should be. The dude in the books was an unbelievable badass, the genius of military geniuses, and an amazing villain who plots within plots and thinking ahead of everybody. He wasn't as good a villain in the Rebels series as he was in the Zahn books, but he was still solid. And if we could get Thrawn as a leading villain in Star Wars live action, I mean, that's what I always wanted out of a sequel trilogy of movies. Was I wanted Thrawn because he was so good, just so good. And if they could get 50% of what Thrawn was in the Zahn books into a live action series with Ahsoka and crew, it would be a hit, at least with me, because I mean, I just love the character. The guy's amazing. So yeah, name drop of Thrawn was good for me. I'm obviously a fan of that character. In the whole expanded universe, Thrawn was probably the single greatest character for me. Just loved the guy. So that was cool. That was really cool for me. And yeah, red shirt, I'm gonna put that comment back up again because you're so right. This is Star Wars, period. This episode was Star Wars. And I'm going to revise my rating to a 9.5 out of 10 instead of the 9 that I originally gave it. This episode was great. The length was perfect. The pacing was perfect. The ambiance and the music were dead on. I was living Star Wars. And if you could punch out episodes like this week after week, you can save this franchise. Best episode of the entire series for me, hands down. And we've gotten a couple that were of very good quality this season, but Chapter 13 really set itself apart, and I'm a huge fan. The final conclusion of it, you get Ahsoka and Mando talking to each other again, and she goes ahead and she gives him the Beskar spear. And at first he doesn't want to take it, but she tells him that, hey, the Beskar belongs with a Mandalorian. If you're not familiar with Ahsoka Tano's backstory, she's certainly familiar with Mandalorians, as you should have picked up through the connection with Bo-Katan. And she gives the Beskar spear to him, and she tells him where he can find a Jedi temple to take Grogu to. And what he is supposed to do is take Grogu to a seeing stone at the temple where Grogu can choose his own path. Whether if he calls out with the Force, it could call a Jedi to come looking for him. So what does that mean? I mean, how many Jedi are left in the universe? We know, of course, of Ahsoka, whom we've just seen and is not going to deal with Grogu. She's got her own agenda going after Thrawn and presumably Ezra. And so what Jedi are around that could be called out to? Luke's around. We know Luke's here. Is this a backdoor to bring Luke into the story somehow? Possibly. Maybe you get that fan wanted Sebastian Stan as Luke, or maybe they'll use de-aging tech on Hamill. Who knows? Alternatively, and probably more likely, is that Ezra shows up. Ezra is a character from Rebels who was trained in the ways of the Force by Kanan Jarrus and is a Jedi-ish. Of course, we also don't know what the hell happened to him because he went off to the unknown regions with Thrawn at the end of Rebels. So Mando's going to head to this temple, and presumably we're going to get a call from Grogu out to another Jedi. And that's where we leave off the episode. So yeah, lucky number 13, Nick. I don't disagree, man. Chapter 13, The Jedi, was the best episode of the series, and everything about it was what we love about Star Wars. Member berries sprinkled in an appropriate fashion. There were some callbacks to some deep lore that, I mentioned KOTOR, that I've seen a lot of KOTOR references in Mando. Usually they're pretty subtle, and they were reasonably subtle again today. But yeah, as a fan of that game and that era of the expanded universe, I enjoyed the hell out of those callbacks. All right, man. Let me know what y'all think about the episode. Give me some comments down below. Remember to like this, share it with your friends on social media. But chapter 13, The Jedi of the Mandalorian, 9.5 out of 10. Not only is this the way, this is Star Wars. Thank you, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, for giving me some real Star Wars. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everybody here in the chat. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next video or the next stream.